Hello, so in this video I wanted to continue with what I started in the first one. I wanted to continue along the theme of what results or what kind of consequences occur when we switch the position of having a daily practice from considering it as the means to which we might accomplish, say, an improvement in our lives, versus setting the meditation practice as the ultimate goal and or result that we want to accomplish. So I think one of the things about having a meditation practice is one of the challenges and difficulties is in sustaining it. And so if we meditate so that we can have some result, for example, a greater calm or peace or more patience in our relationships, I think we set ourselves up for eventual disappointment, because we're likely to set ourselves up for some kind of expectation of a result in our lives that we can notice, that's tangible. So it's common for someone to meditate for a while and say, I've been meditating this long and I've been putting in this much effort and I actually don't see any real changes. I'm still acting like a jerk to my friends or in my relationship, or I'm still just as neurotic, or I still get just as emotionally bent out of shape as I did a year ago or 2 years ago or 10 years ago. What's the point? And we can easily sort of give up and become discouraged. And I think that's a problem. And the problem is that our motivation for showing up is dependent on our perception of whether some other result is occurring. In other words, some result that we would call improvement or growth. And the problem with that, as I found, and I believe it to be, is that we're the worst evaluators of our own growth. Well, I would say that just about all of us are the worst evaluators of our own learning. Now, this is something that in cognitive psychology has been well documented. If you're interested, you might look up a researcher named Bjork, B-J-O-R-K, where he talks about desirable difficulties. But in short, learners are the worst evaluators of their own learning. But I'll try to make that a little bit more personal. Personal as in I'll speak of it from my own personal experience, but hopefully it'll connect to your own personal experience, which is that one of the things that I find is that sometimes in life I might be doing something like meditating, journaling, doing some workshops, and there will be a sense in which I'm growing a lot. There will be other times in my life where I'll feel very stuck, and maybe in a dark place even, where I feel like I'm not growing at all. But after some passage of time, let's say a couple of years, and I look back on both these kinds of events, what I find consistently is that those periods when I feel as if I'm growing, many years later turn out to be periods when actually there's hardly any real growth. Any real growth that takes hold and has any real meaning or sustainable quality years later. And when I look back on those periods when it felt that I was stuck and just struggling and nothing was happening, those turn out to be the periods when I actually had the most substantial growth. And I want to just suggest or challenge each of you who are watching these to even evaluate your own experience in this regard. That most of us tend to be the worst evaluators of when we're growing. And I think this can be easily explained, which is that real growth, real learning, as in the kind that sustains itself or shows itself 5, 10, 20 years later, is very deep. When growth is very deep, we can't see it because it's just too deep. It's hidden. But things that are shallow, that are sitting on the surface, are easy to notice, even by us. And so they're noticeable. Shallow surface growth is very noticeable. Deep, very deep growth is so deep we can't see it. It's so deep. So again, the general principle that I've come up with is growth that I can see is not real growth. Growth that I can't see, where it feels like there's nothing happening despite all my efforts, is really where the growth is. And so going back to this notion of placing a meditation practice as a means to achieve some level of growth has a problem, which is that we'll be motivated to continue meditating as long as we can see growth. but the growth that we see is going to be shallow. It's going to be on the surface. And yet there will come a time when we'll show up to meditation and we'll see no growth. And we'll be like, I'm meditating for the past 3 months or 3 years, and I'm not seeing any growth. Why should I bother? And it's easy to give up. On the other hand, if we place having a meditation practice as the end, as the fruition and accomplishment, then we just show up to it day after day, month after year, month after month, year after year, decade after decade. And we're not concerned whether we see growth. I mean, we might be because we're human, but it's not as heavy an expectation that we place upon our practice. Our intent is to accomplish the goal of showing up to practice. And so what happens, as I've seen in my own life and others that I've seen, is that something does happen. Something much slower, something that requires much more patience than the sort of ego self would want or be able to perceive. And that's the real growth. That's the real hard-won growth. Growth that's independent of the expectations of the self or ego. And what I find is that the way in which one can affect that is by learning to show up to a practice independent of any perceived improvement or growth. And again, the easy way, the little trick, the little suggestion that I've offered in the first and continuing in the second is to place daily meditation practice as the goal, as the accomplishment. There's nothing to be had from that other than that one has shown up steadily across years and decades to that practice. And we trust that the results will occur by showing up. In meditation, just as a little additional thing, some of you who have read some of the things I've written or have heard me say this over and over, that meditation is inherently self-correcting. And because it's inherently self-correcting, as long as we show up, there will be some level of self-correction going on, so we just keep showing up. It's almost impossible to keep showing up across years and decades and going in the wrong direction. If we keep going in the wrong direction, there will be some self-correction going on within the practice, and the results will occur. But we're not doing it for the results. We're doing it to show up to a practice and allowing for the self-corrective process to guide us so that, in fact, other results do occur. And, one might ask, what are the primary results we're looking for? It's not a better life. It's not even better relationships. What we're looking for is a transformation of the mind and heart. That's what we're looking for ultimately. If we're looking for signs and indications in our practice, that's what we ought to be looking for. Because when we have a transformation of our minds and hearts, so that there's less craziness or drama or neuroticism and hatred and clinging, and more of letting go, forgiveness, openness of mind, a softness of mind and heart, the more that those qualities are showing up in our mind and heart, the rest will take care of itself. Our relationships will sort of take care of themselves if we can transform our minds and hearts. And so that's what we look for if we're looking for something. We're not looking for an improvement of our lives. We're looking for a change or transformation in our minds and hearts. And yet, the goal is simply to show up to a practice on a regular, if not daily basis. So this will be part 2. I will do a part 3 and stick it somewhere else on this website. So I hope that gives you further food for thought. Thank you for listening.